Wednesday, November 19th, please. Give everybody a minute to sit down, and then we'll do roll call if we can. Katie? Everybody ready?
Patty
Go ahead.
Martinson. Ron Weifenbach.
Here.
Sam Quaker. Deb Hadcock.
Here.
Karen Gunderson Olson. Here. Bill O'Krepke. Lloyd LaCroix. Ron Kroger. Malcolm Chapman.
Here.
Thank you, Katie. At this point, we have one item, council members, on the special council meeting today, and it will be on beautification committee presentation, and Miss Kathy Calhoun will be giving us that presentation. If you have any questions during her presentation, I did give her kind of the sign that I put my finger up and that we would take questions as she's talking if we need be, okay?
Okay.
Thank you, Miss Kathy. You can go ahead and start your presentation.
Okay, as she said that I was told that we had 50 minutes to an hour to present. Is that correct? Okay. My name's Kathy Calhoun, and I'm a member of the Beautification Committee in Rapid City. I'm also an instructor at South Dakota State University, College of Nursing at the Rapid City campus. I have brought a friend and a fellow concerned citizen of Rapid City, Jim Peterson, to present a PowerPoint on the digital billboards for you. I have a cold, and I don't think my voice would hold out to do both of the presentations, so I'm going to do part of it, and then he's going to do part of it. He's also passionate about the issue. I was asked to speak to you today because I have had an interest in the billboard control. I was on the county sign ordinance committee that met last year to look at their ordinance. It was a committee of members of the county commission, concerned citizens, representatives of tourism-oriented businesses, and then representatives of the sign companies were at every meeting, were in attendance at every meeting. We were able to change some of the ordinances related to size, height, spacing, and yet still ended up giving the sign companies some of their requests, such as the use of electronic boards in the county. I am a very quick, fast speaker, so if I'm too fast for you, just tell me to slow down, because I have a tendency to go quickly. But fortunately, due to the efforts of many people in Rapid City a few years ago, the Rapid City has an ordinance that is far superior to many cities across the nation. However, now as the technology has expanded, there are parts of our ordinance that still need to be tightened. So that's why we're here today. I would recommend that there be appointed a committee soon to make some changes to the current ordinance as it stands. In background, as you know, there's a perceived balance between the interests of business and the interests of the general public. I think that as you do more research, you'll find that the interests of the businesses and the interests of the general public come together and are the same. But I'd like to show you, to speak to you about some of the research that's out there that show that strict billboard control is financially positive for a community as well as viable for a community. The last short article I placed in your packet speaks to this. When I speak about that packet, I gave you some of the pictures that I'm going to show you on a PowerPoint, as well as towards the back there is a chart which speaks to the 2007 advertiser budget that has been happening in outdoor advertising in the country. And you can see as outdoor advertising increases, is continuing to increase in the country, that they've gone from 1998 of $4.4 billion to $7.28 billion. And it is in their business plan to continue to increase the amount of outdoor advertising. I mean, that's their business plan, is to continue to increase. And in fact, the sign companies say that if they have a space that's available, like in Rapid City, to put a sign in, that it's their company's policy to get those signs up as soon as they can, because they're trying to grow their businesses. And then if you look on the other piece of paper that's across from that, there's a paper that I received from Sioux Falls that shows that the community ratios. And in Lincoln, Nebraska, it shows that they have a 2.13 amount of billboards per square mile. Sioux Falls has 3.3 billboards per square mile. But you look at Rapid City, we have 9.2 billboards per square mile. So we are way above the national average as well as even our regional average in terms of billboards. And then there are some other things in here showing you the next graph would be about billboards and logo signs and Toto signs and so forth. And then this odd paper here is just showing you the size of a mega billboard in relation to the poster size of billboards that we allow in Rapid City. So the little squiggly part is the poster size that we allow in relation to some of the other billboard sizes that are out there. So that it's just some background material for you. And then there's a small statement about billboard control is good for business and a model billboard ordinance that comes from scenicamerica.org. So we'll go on here. So there are some quotes taken from some of the research that's out there related to the viability of billboard control, and some quotes that I found. The Honorable Richard Lamb, former governor of Colorado, stated that billboards contribute a minuscule amount to our economic well-being, but they impose a high cost. They detract from Colorado's attractiveness to tourists and from the pleasant surroundings for our residents. The next article I read was an Understanding Tourism Research Statistics, which states that there's no evidence that billboards have any benefit for local economies. In fact, more than 1,000 communities in 5 states prohibit new billboards, and there is no evidence that this has had a negative economic impact. Cities such as Williamsburg and Virginia Beach, Virginia, experienced increased tourism spending after enacting tough billboard ordinances. Scenic America is an organization dedicated to billboard control, so you recognize their bias, of course. And they have a website that you can go to, and it's www.scenic.org. And there's quite a lot of information on that website, which you're able to peruse on your own. One article on their website stated, mistakenly believing that it's necessary for economic growth, we have allowed commercial interests to take over our public spaces. For example, courts have ruled that billboards derive their value not from the property value they stand on, but from the public roads that they stand next to, roads that we build and we maintain. It is this principle that gives communities the legal right to regulate and even ban billboards. In fact, hundreds of cities in 4 states have banned all billboards, and 6 states have banned digital billboards without any loss to economic vitality and frequently with a gain, proving that beauty can be good for business. So then lastly, I just wanted to give you some public opinion polls, because some of the sign representative will say that, the billboards are beautiful, they look great. So some reputable public opinion polls find that most Americans think billboards are ugly, intrusive, and uninformative. Not one reputable survey shows that people like billboards. By a 10-to-1 margin, Floridians favor reducing the number of billboards. That was on the Survey of Outdoor Advertising from 1995. More than 2/3 of New Hampshire residents oppose billboards on highways. That was Public Attitudes Towards Billboards in New Hampshire, 1994. 9 out of 10 Michigan residents feel that the state has too many billboards, questions commissioned by Michigan United Conservation Clubs, 1997. And they go on, so I can give you a copy of some of those. But with this in mind, I'll begin this presentation with some slides to help all of us get on the same page in terms of understanding the terms in the current ordinance and what we were able to change in the county ordinance. Currently, the city is able to change the areas of billboard control in terms of height, spacing, face size, number of faces that are viewed, as well as whether to have electronic billboards or not, and how electronic billboards are shown, lighted, and have their message changed. As I understand the regulations, we are unable to outright ban outdoor advertising in Rapid City due to a state law that prohibits municipalities from doing so at this time. I think that that's correct. So we'll show you some slides. They're related to spacing, height, and face size. And if I figure out how to use your technology, we'll be good. Uh-oh, audience. I see I messed it up.
Marcia or Bob, do you guys know the ordinance on billboards by chance?
That's all you need to do. That's all you.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Marcia?
Is there a
Yeah, you're up
specific
there.
question or?
What the ordinance is for billboards in our city or state that Kathy just had talked about?
In terms of the banning of outdoor advertising, I think that there's a state law that was put in place by the people from Wall Drug a long time ago that doesn't allow municipal ordinances to outright ban outdoor advertising or to interfere with outdoor advertising, as I understand.
Marcia Elkins?
I guess I can't answer that specific question. I know that the legal advice the council's received in the past is that it's much more defensible to not try to ban them completely, but to try to
Limit them in
Limit
terms of
them.
size, space, face size.
Thank you, Ms.
and so
Marcia.
forth. Thanks.
Ms. Kathy, we have a question from Karen Olson, please.
Okay.
I was just going to make the same comment. The state codified law states that it doesn't prohibit outdoor advertising. You can regulate outdoor advertising, but you can't forbid outdoor advertising.
Right.
Thank you, Ms. Karen.
Okay. So these are pictures that I think will visually give you some ideas. We'll see. Technology is always interesting. All
Do
right.
you need some help, Ms. Kathy?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay.
Just have to figure out which screen to go to. So this is a picture that shows coming in from Piedmont what the entrance to Rapid City used to look like. And all of the entrance to Rapid City used to look like this. This one, sorry, it's not oriented correctly, but this one looks at the view that our tourists get as they're coming into Rapid City from Box Elder. Box Elder has allowed the state law to supersede their regulations and allows them to be 45 feet high, 750 feet, I think, and every 500 feet in terms of spacing. So this is what people look at when they come into Rapid City just before they hit our exit. Yep.
Karen Olson, please.
The other thing that happens here is these are all on the DM&E right-of-way. So
Right.
the DM&E has this railroad right-of-way, and they have chosen to lease space to the billboard companies.
Thank you, Ms.
Right.
Karen.
And there are many implications in terms of that, whether something that's been given eminent domain has the right to be able to give up that space for advertising, and there's a lot of legal issues involved with that. But from our perspective, that's what they see. This is what our visitors see as they come into Rapid City. The 500-foot spacing, which is the current spacing within the city right now under our current ordinance. And so I think we need to look at that spacing. Our spacing on the roads outside of Rapid City is 1,000 feet. So here's the spacing slide. The current 500-foot apart for signs within the city of Rapid City from any other off-premise sign is what we currently have on the books. On a public road, our spacing for our city extends to 1,000 feet. The county just extended their spacing to 1,500 feet, so I think we should at least go to a 1,500 spacing. And this is looking at just, and using computers, looking at those billboards that come into Box Elder, and I'm not really trying to get on anybody's billboard case in terms of like, if, I don't know if these are Lamar or Epic or what billboard company this is. They were just convenient to do some manipulations with. So this is 500 feet spacing within 1 mile, the current spacing inside town. And this is eliminating billboards in between each one of these by using magic and making them 1,000 feet spacing in 1 mile. And as I said, the county has now moved to the 1,500 spacing. This is looking at 2,000 feet between billboards, and then the last one is 5,000 feet between billboards. Wouldn't that be nice? Okay, there you go. So as I said, the current spacing is 500 feet in the city from one off-premise sign to another off-premise sign. So we would propose that between the off-premise signs within the city that they be at least extended to 1,000 feet. And currently the 1,000 feet apart on roads is 5 to 6 billboards per mile. And we would propose that it would at least get to the Pennington County regulation, which would be 1,500 feet between signs, which would be 3 to 4 per mile. Or even better, given the excess of signs to 2,500 feet between new off-premise signs, which would be 2 to 3 per mile. Now we're going to look at face size. And this is the slide that shows you what I tried to give you in that packet. The top slide here, the top part is the size of a billboard that is what I would call a mega sign, which is 672 square feet. That was eliminated in Pennington County. There will be no more mega signs in Pennington County. And then the yellow in the middle is showing you the poster size sign that we allow in Rapid City. The next size down would be a middle size sign. Can you see that? You really can't see those lines around, but it goes to the extent of the Lamar part. And it's 10.6 by 36, and that is what I would consider a middle size sign, and that's the new sign that will go on the interstate in Pennington County. And then the next size sign is a poster size sign, which is what we allow in Rapid City. Oops. Ah. Sorry. Oh, goodness. So this poster size sign, and then there is another sign, another size. This is 239 square feet, which is what we allow in Rapid City, but there is another size sign that's smaller than this, that's about 72 square feet. I wasn't told that by the sign companies. They told me that these were the sizes that the sign companies had that were industrial size signs. But I've since found out that there's this smaller size, about 72 square feet, that they also can move their signs around the country. You know, the sign companies put up these faces on their billboards, and then they take them down and they move it to the next place where this event is going to happen, and they move those faces around the country. And so they need to be some sort of industrial, you know, standard size for them to be able to move those faces around. But there is another size smaller than this size that is available. And this is just giving some nomenclature to those size signs in terms of talking about a mega size sign, a middle sign, a poster sign. And a poster is the size limit in Rapid City. So this is an example of one of those signs out by Box Elder of the mega size sign that's 45 feet tall, and that size, which is no longer allowed. And as you see the lines around, we did with the computer, we showed what a middle size sign would look like in the city versus the poster size. But I think one of the things that's really interesting on this slide is look at the size of this for lease sign and how well you actually can see that for lease sign versus how big this poster size sign is. Do we really need a poster size sign to get our message across in Rapid City where you're looking at it from about 30 feet away versus a sign that's maybe a little bigger than this size sign to get the same message across? I mean, I think we really could decrease the height of these signs and the size of the faces and still get the message that the businesses want in the to be allowed. So this is looking at that same poster size sign. This is to show that some of the sign companies said that they had to have these big mega size signs in order to get the message in place. And this is a sign that's on the interstate, which negates that, because each one of these small signs within the sign is a poster size sign. So nobody needs a mega size sign or even a middle size sign to get your message across, even on the interstate. So demonstrating that the poster size is readily seen even on an interstate, and there's no reason for anything larger than that. The face size, the current face size now is 250 square feet or poster size. And I would contend that due to the brightness, the clarity, and the intrusiveness of the message on electronic signs, which are now can be poster size, that there's no need for the message to be as large as a regular size poster billboard. We would suggest that they be much smaller. And Jim Peterson is going to speak to you about digital billboards and giving you some more information about them. Currently, our height is 30 feet of our signs. And this is looking in terms of a manipulation of that sign out there. This is looking the sign is 45 feet right now, and this manipulation is looking at a 30-foot sign of the poster size versus the 45 of the larger signs. So we're only looking at that much difference in terms of our sign ordinance currently. I put this one on there because the Department of Transportation has determined that this sign right here, this Box Elder Ellsworth Air Force Base commercial gate sign, is of a readable size, and it's much shorter, much smaller, the face is much smaller. The Department of Transportation has also determined that the sight visibility below the sign, even at the shorter height, is enough to prevent any accidents. So the question you would pose would be, why would we need signs that are taller or larger than this Department of Transportation sign? In terms of height for signs, the argument is that they need height in order for traffic visibility. On the bottom half of the sign, this is a double sign, but the bottom half of the sign would be 20 feet tall with a 10-foot bottom and a 10.5, it's 20.5, I guess, because it's a 10-foot bottom and then a 15.5 foot top. But you can see these are tractor trailer trucks that are in the picture of these signs. Tractor trailer trucks. I mean, I don't know how many tractor trailer trucks we need to be able to see in Rapid City on our streets to be able to avoid an accident, because a regular car would be much shorter than this, and do we really need 10 feet here in order to avoid an accident? So I would propose that the height could be 8 feet or less to allow for traffic, and the total height could be reduced to 8 feet plus the 10.5, or if you went to the smaller size face, even smaller than that. So you could have an ordinance, instead of 30 feet high, you could have an ordinance that was 19 feet even with the poster size, or less than that if you went to the smaller size billboards. There are various nuances. I know you know about the heights of signs, and sometimes the height is measured from the roadbed, because there are dips in the landscape next to the road, and so some ordinances say that the height of the sign is measured from the roadbed up, and some are just the total height of the sign itself, which wouldn't account for the dips in the landscape. So you need to decide how the height is measured. That's a really critical piece of the ordinance that you need to include. So in conclusion with these slides would be that do we want to be able to see the vistas of the prairie and the hills, or do we want the pop-up advertising that everywhere you look? So do you want to see this, or do you want to see this? And really the city council has the choice of being able to make decisions about what vistas you want to be shown around Rapid City and our entrance to Rapid City. So I plead for you that we need some work on this. I think, do you have questions about that part of the presentation?
Council members, does anybody have questions at this point? Looks like we don't, Miss Kathy.
Okay. Okay, now I think then I'll have Jim come up and speak about digital signs, right?
Yeah, sure.
There's a lot of work to be done about digital signs, but we did find this PowerPoint, and I'll try and find it for you.
And your name, sir, is?
Jim Peterson,
Thank you.
one of your constituents, representing a lot of your other constituents I've talked to. And, I haven't run across a single one that is excited about the signage in Rapid City, South Dakota. Most of them believe, like I do, that it's visual pollution, sky trash, litter on a stick, the junk mail of American highways, those kinds of things you hear.
Wait a minute.
Can't work on
Do you
that.
need these?
No, I just need
Okay, you just
the
need a
things I push the
slideshow,
button,
sorry.
however that works.
Technology,
And I actually have a more militant view than Kathy. I really think we should work for a total prohibition of any more signage in Rapid City, South Dakota. And it's not that out there on the skinny branches. 1,500 communities and cities in America have already done that. And of course, that's been vetted legally and financially and every other way. But of course, we do have this problem with the state, and we need to work to change that so we can determine our own destiny in Rapid City, I think. Anyway, the digital sign issue is
just push this.
this one?
Yeah.
Great. Is a significant one. when we were working on the county ordinance just a couple of years ago, there were no digital signs in Rapid City, with the exception of the one at the convention center. And unfortunately, that was kind of the impetus for Epic to be able to put these, and now Lamar, these other ones in. As a matter of fact, it was the Rapid City City Council that wavered your own ordinance, allowing them to put these digital signs in the railroad right-of-way, which is startling when you think about it. I mean, I was driving up to, where's that, St. Patrick. I mean, the railroad crossing of St. Patrick. Where's the more dangerous place than a major road crossing a railroad crossing? And what's right there in the right-of-way, right next to the intersection? One of these huge digital signs. And it was wavered, and it was against the ordinance, but it was wavered by the city council. So, I don't know, I don't get it. Anyway, the specific issues with the digital signage are, Kathy, this doesn't work. I won't lie to you for this stuff. Okay.
Okay.
There we go. Okay, so the main issues with digital signage is the aesthetic concerns, safety is a huge concern, and of course my major concern is the environmental consequences, because that's my gig, basically. The aesthetic, give me a moment. Of course, aesthetic issues are by their very nature subjective, but just drive through the Gap, drive up St. Patrick. I mean, these signs are proliferating at such a rate that the whole visual horizon is now being obscured. You can't see the Razorback, can't see Skyline Drive, certainly can't see the hills. And like Kathy said, it's totally open-ended. I mean, this is like almost an addiction. The signage creates its own demand. Like my wife just ran for the state legislature. Well, she bought a sign for $850 a month. She certainly wouldn't have done that if all these other big signs weren't up that people paid $850 a month to buy. So I mean, it's a demand that's created by the fact that you build more signs, and that's totally open-ended, restricted only by the ordinance. Where can you put more signage? And believe me, Epic and Lamar and all those guys are beating the bushes to find every single space in this town that they can stick another sign up. So that's what we got. So they're the major aesthetic concerns. You can take those for consideration. Other considerations, more objective, are they definitely affect property values. If you've got some big glaring, billboard, but particularly if you've got a big digital sign, lighten up your yard during the evening hours, that's going to really affect your property values. So you have these light and noise effects of households and businesses. And here's the huge issue that I think the council has to consider, is the economic considerations of compensation if these signs have to be altered or removed some place down the line. And that's going to happen, I think, for the reasons we'll talk about here in a minute. Highway safety concerns, of course, is a preeminent issue. The brightness is the brightest thing you see. Like I said, at the railroad crossing, you got this tiny little light that's flashing that says the train's coming, and you got this giant Epic sign that's 100 times bigger in area.
Electronic sign.
I mean, yeah, electronic sign, flashing also. And it literally flashes because it changes so quickly, also against the ordinance. This rotation every 4 to 6 or 8 seconds, what's our ordinance say? 6 seconds. That's not rigidly enforced because they have these techniques where they fade or so it's actually like a moving thing that does it. So it changes more often than every 4 to 6 seconds. And some of them just flat out have moving video. So, here's a really interesting issue, and this is from the Advertising Council itself. It takes about 5 seconds looking at a sign to comprehend what that sign's trying to tell you. And they use that to determine how long they're going to leave that visual up there on the digital sign. Remember that 5 seconds, because that becomes particularly relevant here in a minute. So how bright are these things? Well, let's compare it. The sun's 6,500 nits. During the daylight, they have to crank these things up so that you can see them over the sun. They're 10,000 nits, so they're incredibly bright. And of course, at night, they're a lot less bright than that, but they're really far and away the brightest thing in the whole area. Very distracting. So here's the important thing from a safety point of view. And this is the science. This is the hard science that we have, unbiased by the profit motive or anything else. It's from the National Department of Transportation. Anything that attracts the driver for more than 2 seconds increases your chances of a crash or a near crash. And that's obvious. You look away for 2 seconds from what you're doing. And then they're very definitive in this study. A 2 seconds, a 2-second diversion increases the rate of crashes 23% or near crashes. And 3 seconds, it increases to nearly 80% of crashes. So, I mean, it's a really significant, I mean, that's hard science. That's a very significant factor. So there it is. Just do the math. I mean, the bottom line is that this 2 second, anything more than 2 seconds that you're diverted from your task of driving becomes a significant danger, and the sign company themselves says they put a 5-second distraction up there to make the advertising effective. So that is the conflict. So can we have digital signs at all and operate vehicles safely? I'd say definitely not. Not a chance. And for these reasons that you can read for yourself. Now, of course, the industry says otherwise, and they have studies. But there are studies done by the industry is the problem. The unbiased studies that are being done now, the Federal Highway Administration is involved in a study for the last 2 years. It's supposed to be released in mid-2009. So that's a pending federal study, the official U.S. Highway Department study that will say definitively if these things are safe. Then the American Association of Highway and Transportation Officials, that's the blanket organization of all state highway departments. They also have an independent study that is being pretty much managed by the National Academy of Sciences. So those 2 definitive studies are in the works and going to be out, within the year or so. So where does that leave us? This is where it leaves us. Since you can't say definitively that these signs are safe, and intuitively you would say they're not safe, then it seems like the only rational approach is to put a moratorium on any more digital signs until such time as you have those definitive studies in hand. Why? Well, my major concern as a citizen is because you will place us, the citizens of Rapid City, South Dakota, in a very liable position if knowing that definitive studies are being done at this moment on the safety of these signs, and you ignore that and allow these signs to be constructed, and then somewhere down the line, the study comes out and says, yeah, these are dangerous signs. And then somebody has an accident, their child's killed because they were distracted by the sign, and they go back to this study and say, these were dangerous, and you didn't do anything about it. Well, I think we're, ask the lawyers, but I think we'd be liable. So, legally liable, also morally accountable too. So that's my major concern. So, the industry will say that they have studies in hand that say these things are safe, but both studies were sponsored by the Advertising Association of America, the money laundered through clear channels. So that was, let's just say it wasn't totally unbiased research. And the only people that really looked at that was the Maryland State Highway Administration, looked at that specific research. This guy, Jerry Washtell, is an internationally renowned highway safety guy. And this was results of his report. Basically, it's totally flawed science, as you would expect. And there's his conclusion.
You need them time to read that. Teacher, you're not.
I'm not. Did you read that? There's the conclusion. It's an obvious conclusion. Another thing that the industry will bring up is that the Federal Highway Department itself has allowed just last year to relax their ordinance that allows digital signs on the national highways. Well, if you've been reading the paper the last few weeks, as the administration leaves office, they're getting rid of all kinds of regulations and stuff at the last minute here. So, but that decree has violated the Highway Beautification Act and innumerable other laws. So that's going to be challenged here shortly. And then on a federal level, we're going to be in the same problem with allowing unsafe signs and having to incur the cost to get them taken out of there and so on and so forth. So here's the problems with that law. It violates the Highway Beautification Act provisions on off-premises signs, violates the regular prohibitions on intermittent signs, and the big thing is, of course, it permits signs before their own research is complete, which is my concern here with our ordinance. Totally ignores the findings on the 2-second distraction, and another big issue is ignores the later cost of the signs must be altered or removed. So, and last but not least, as an environmentalist, this is a big concern of mine. I mean, do we need these digital signs? I mean, do we really need them? The full-size signs use almost 400,000 kilowatts per year to operate. The small ones are about a third of that. But still, I mean, it's a tremendous carbon footprint for something we absolutely don't need. And I mean, is that what we want to do for our children? Allow that to happen? I would think not. So that's about it. Any questions?
Council members, any questions? This is an open meeting, so people from the audience can talk and make their comments if they'd like.
Okay, I have a couple more things there.
Okay.
Go back now that my voice has had a little rest. Do you have any questions so far about the digital signs? I have, so the recommendations that we have right now are, although there are many parts of the ordinance that we have in Rapid City that are strict, the enforcement of those restrictions sometimes needs to be expanded. So in Rapid City, we need stricter enforcement of the regulations that we do have. And then in order to provide enforcement, we need additional monies to do the enforcement. We think that could be generated through licensing fees. We already have a licensing fee of $75 a year for the signs, outdoor advertising licensure. And the cost, while the cost to advertise on a large plain billboard in Rapid City, like Jim just said, was about $840 a month, or approximately they generate $10,000 a year. That's just a plain sign that's just put up there. We could easily increase that fee that they pay on an annual basis to 4 times that. I mean, if it's $75 a year, then you could easily increase that to $300 or something a year, which wouldn't impinge on their profitability at all. This would only be 10 days of advertising out of 360 days of revenue that they generate to help enforce the regulations that they may or may not be meeting. The other thing we could do in terms of generating money would be to increase the fines, make fines for violations, which would actually curtail the advertising companies from changing their electronic message as soon as the inspectors go by. One of the things that has been said to me is that they can change it within 10 seconds. They can change that advertising message on those electronic signs. So it's such a difficult process to keep them under control. And to me, it makes sense that you would have a stricter violation fining system, so that you would give them a warning the first time their electronic sign was not in compliance, and then the next time it would be $100, and the next time it would be $200, and the next time it would be $400. And at some point, they would realize that it was economically not viable for them to not have an electronic sign that was within the regulations. So you could make the violations higher, those fees higher, and that would help to generate the money for the inspector. Where I've seen electronic signs out of compliance has been most often on-premise signs. The electronic signs, I've seen ones where they have flashing, for sale, on sale, come here, today, big sale, stuff like that. So those are all in violation, and we need to figure out a way to keep them under compliance, even if we allow them to continue. Another area that needs to be worked on, as I said, was the height from the current 30 feet to 19 feet or lower. Meade County has just passed an ordinance that states the signs must have a base at the base on the sign, and we could investigate what their thoughts are and how they've changed their ordinance. They certainly have had an issue with out-of-control signage in Meade County. We could look at the sign face changing from 250 square feet to a smaller size. There could be a smaller that smaller industry size could still be circulated around the country, and it's somewhere around 72 square feet. We don't need a sign within the city to be able to see the signs from a mile away. We're not looking at great distances to these signs. They don't need to be as large as they are currently. And then we could look at the spacing between off-premise signs, which is currently 500 feet. To reduce the visual clutter, we could expand this to 1,000 feet between off-premise signs within the city. And then outside of the city proper on the roads, we could expand that sign distance between 1,000 feet currently to 1,500 feet. So there are many changes that need to happen to change the electronic signs. And when our ordinance was done,
Just 1 minute. Miss Karen Olson, I'm sorry, I didn't see your light, Miss Karen.
you what? Okay.
Thank you, Miss Karen.
A few years ago, when we did this rehaul of the ordinance, the electronic signs really weren't as prevalent as they are today, and so there are many more restrictions that we need to place on it and make our ordinance tighter. That needs to happen, and before the electronic signs get out of control in the city. There are issues of brightness. I know that they've been working on the brightness issue already. How long the message is on itself. Currently, it's supposed to be 6 seconds. It was supposed to be a static message, static 6 seconds off, static 6 seconds off. And if you see the electronic signs, there's this time where they put the message up that's very movable. It's not supposed to be movable. And so there's a lot of issues in how they put the message up on their boards. There are some communities that allow a change of message only every 12 hours. Now, wouldn't that be interesting? So they have a new message every day or every 12 hours, but it's not 6 seconds, and it certainly wouldn't distract the driving public. Many communities have changed the message changeover to 8 seconds, and at least from 6. There's much to be done on the time that a message has to change so that drivers are not distracted. That change time that they have, I think it's called dwell time, where the message is being put up. There's a lot of technical aspects of that need to be looked into by a committee. There's, due to the clarity, the brightness, and the intrusiveness of electronic signs, the size of the face in my opinion, doesn't need to be as large as a paper billboard to be seen. It's much clearer, much brighter, and so forth. And then as you've heard about the liability issues that are looming for municipalities in relation to safety and distractibility, we would also recommend that the council place a moratorium on all new electronic billboards until the results of the Highway Transportation Board results come in. In conclusion, you see that there are still many areas of the ordinance which need to be addressed. And from my perspective, we could follow up with a more detailed information meeting for you in a few months to try and deal with some of those electronic issues or some of those other issues if you'd like. There's a great deal of new technology that's out there now for the traveling public to utilize instead of billboards, and we'd like to show you this technology. I have a man from Verizon who wanted to come in and talk to you about how you can access information you can access on your cell phone right in the car, somebody in your car, not you, the driver, but someone in the car could access. They can go to a site they can go to a map that could be pulled up for them to get to a place. They can go on and find out what's available in Rapid City, hotels, they can make reservations, they can do all that right from their cell phone now. So there's a lot of technology out there in terms of navigation systems and other technology that we could show you at a further later date. Then there's a lot of alternatives to billboards because one of the arguments is that if you didn't have billboards, then the traveling public wouldn't know where to go. And there are many other alternatives out there in terms of logo signs, tourist-oriented directional signs, guidebooks, and new technologies that allow the traveling public to find what they need to do. So in conclusion, I would say that tourism spending in Vermont rose 50% in the 2 years after the state removed its last billboard. It rose 50% when they lost their last billboard. In addition, some of the top vacation spots in the United States are billboard free, including Alaska. They have mile marker guidebooks that people go by. Hawaii has no billboards, Maine, and Vermont. We would like Rapid City to still remain a tourist destination. We would like to encourage new businesses to locate here. Studies have shown that people choose their destination and their place of residence on how a place appeals to them. That's their sensitivity and what's happening and whether there's billboards and how nice it looks. As you have seen, we have an uphill battle getting visitors to Rapid City when the view they get when they enter the territory is one of billboard blight like there is in Box Elder. The visitors who come don't know that these massive signs are Box Elders or Meade counties and not Rapid Cities. So I would urge you to continue to develop a committee to look into tightening our regulations further. I know that we have a great billboard ordinance as it stands, but it needs some tightening. And I'd be glad to work on that, or you may not want to ever hear from me again, which is fine. But I really do think that we need to get on it before the billboards become even more of a problem. Thank you. Thank you very
Jim and
much for
Kathy.
having us. And there's also another member of the beautification committee here, Steve Dozier, if he wanted to, I don't know if you want to say anything or.
Ms. Kathy, is
Okay.
this the view of the whole beautification committee since you are representing the beautification committee?
I would say it's the view of the people that are on my little subcommittee.
Okay, for beautification, and this is why the presentation on
Yes.
billboards today. Okay, thank you. Guys, you're not sitting in the right spot, so just, okay. Karen Olson?
Are these, are the billboards taxed?
I don't know for sure. I don't think so. I think that,
No, they're not. There's an annual fee, $75, that's it. You know that?
Jim,
Oh,
come on up front.
is that how you work this?
Yeah, please. I
Jim
appreciate it,
Peterson.
Jim.
I can speak to that. Matter of fact, that's a real problem when we're considering new revenue streams for the city and county and state. If you look at what I do, promoting wind, if you put up a wind tower, you have to pay to the county every year, property taxes on the $1 million wind tower. And you got to pay a production tax for the electricity you sell. But if you're Lamar and you come here out of state and you put up one of those big ugly signs, you don't pay anything except this little annual fee. So you don't pay anything as far as property tax to the county. You don't pay any sales tax for all the advertising you sell. So we get nothing. They use the public common because what makes those valuable, again, is that they're adjacent to the thoroughfares. So they use the public common, they make all this money, and we get nothing. So, in answer to your question, no, we don't get taxes.
so, the electronic billboards cost about $150,000 for them to put them up. And yet we don't get the tax for a structure like a house. If we had a $150,000 house, we would get certainly some tax from that. But
Ms. Karen, do you have a follow-up?
Right, I do have another question. I mean, one of the challenges that you mentioned, Kathy, is the ability to regulate the signs. And I mean, as you drive around town, it's very clear that these are very easy to alter. And in visiting with Brad Solon, who works on the enforcement of the signs, it's a constant frustration to him that all it does, I mean, they can change those signs from a remote location, and they are very hard to regulate. So I think that that is a real challenge in terms of figuring out how you regulate, and you did address that in some degree, and I'm just supporting the fact that they are hard to regulate. I know pretty specifically when Tony Marshall came in and made the presentation for the waiver which the council granted to him to place a sign in the historic neighborhood, the promise was that those would be very stationary and tasteful. Now, of course, tasteful is in the eye of the beholder, but they're definitely not stationary. And they, in the interim, since that sign has been put in place, they do move. They slide across, and they do a variety of things that, in the initial conversations, the commitment was they would not do that, and they are not in compliance with the ordinances that currently runs. But the challenge is, it's really difficult to keep constant track of them because the ability to change them is very, very easy.
that's why I really believe that you have to initiate a violation or a ticket to them that would increase in value such that it's not economically viable for them to change the message.
Ms. Karen?
That's it.
Okay, thank you. We have Lloyd LaCroy.
Thank you, thank you, Madam Chair. First, I'd like to apologize for being late, but I guess I was a little ill-prepared for this
That's okay.
informational meeting because I was expecting a different report. But I did sit on the Ordinance Review Board. I think it was about 14 months ago that we reviewed the ordinance, and we had a group of people and it went on. And so I'm pretty familiar with some of the problems that we were having. And I thought the group had come forward with some good changes at that point in time. And some of the concerns that you've just expressed, I think, is the problem that task force had was mostly on premise, the hotel signs being too bright and so forth. And so we went into great discussion on those. But I guess I'd need some more time to research what we changed on the
I don't think any of
ordinance
us
and so
have the
forth,
full answer. And that's why I think we need someone to appoint some sort of committee of people who are interested in that to continue to work on the ordinance and make recommendations of exactly how the ordinance could be changed.
I guess that was my point, is it was only like 14 months ago, so I mean, that would, to get the research to see what all the ordinance changes were, there was a great variety of people on that task force, and along with the city attorney and all people that are interested. So that's where I'm coming from, is I guess I'd just like to research that before shouting out and form another task force.
I took
So-
the ordinance that I was looking at from the current website, so if that's not the current ordinance, it needs to be changed. So that I was just speaking from the ordinance as it stands correct right now.
Thank you, Lloyd. Any other council members? We do have a speaker that would like to speak in the audience, if that's okay with the council members. Malcolm Champin.
My understanding, whether people agree or disagree with what's being presented, is that this is an information meeting, and the only item on the agenda was for those to present information. Whether this was endorsed by the Beautification Committee as it's come forward or not, it seems like it's debatable. But these information meetings, in my mind, shouldn't get into pitting someone against one another. It's just to give the council some information.
Right.
And we can't take action on any of that information. It's just to digest the information. I'm not trying to stop someone from speaking, but my understanding is that it's just to receive information from those who are on the agenda to present. But that's just my comment. If you allow someone to speak, I will sit here and listen to their information as well, but
Okay, I appreciate that. When I was thinking on beautification, I thought we were talking about all beautification things, and so I apologize. I did not know it was specifically on billboards. Next time I will know to check specifically what it's for. But I think if you're given information on billboards, this is about billboards, and there's a company that's here for billboards, and I myself, I don't want to pit one against the other, but I think it's information on billboards. So I myself, I don't know if we need to take a vote, or the council, what's the council's opinion, please?
I'll live by the ruling of the chair.
What?
I'll live by the ruling of the chair, whatever
Okay.
you decide.
If that's okay, I would
Madam
like to
Chairman?
hear, hold on just a minute, Karen. I would like to hear the information from the other side, but that's me. Karen Olson, please.
I would say that it would be more appropriate to have this discussion. If you want to have this, another presentation, I'd be happy to listen to another presentation.
Brendan, can you tell me how long your presentation would be? And
Thank you, Madam Chair. About 45 seconds.
thank you. Does anybody have a problem with the presentation for 45 seconds? Ron Weifenbach?
Madam Chair, I appreciate it. I just want to make sure that the audience understands we're not here to make any decisions.
Right.
And I'm more than happy to listen to the 45 seconds. I just want to
Brennan?
make that clear.
You also can be put on a special council meeting as well. Today we will, if that's okay, let him speak, but if you'd like to do a special presentation at any time, we can put you on the agenda on billboards as well, to be fair to both sides. But go ahead, Brendan Casey, if that's okay with the council.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brendan Casey, Epic Outdoor Advertising. What you've just seen is a fairly standard boilerplate from Scenic America, and this does come up every 4 or 5 years. Certainly Kathy has been a very loyal opponent, as has Councilwoman Olson. We've went through this. This has been done repeatedly. The only thing I would ask, though, is when we do have these presentations, this is far from accurate information, and the industry certainly has a right to participate in these, and some notification would have been good, but I understand this was an informational meeting. But be advised, the industry has information too.
And I thank you for that information, Brendan, but get a hold of me, and if you would like to do a presentation, to be all fair, we can do a presentation from the billboard companies as well, just so the council has information from both sides.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brendan.
Can I say something?
Kathy?
I don't think it's a side thing. I think it's everybody is interested in Rapid City, that people in Rapid City are interested in all of the businesses doing well. And so it's not just, it shouldn't be the billboards against the people. I mean, it should be all of us looking for the interests of Rapid City.
Right. And your presentation, I appreciate that you come today and that the beautification came today. Very well appreciative. Just thought it would be nice, to be fair, if they didn't have that. I didn't know it was on billboard, so I apologize. It was a good presentation. I appreciate you coming forward. We put you on there. They have all the same opportunity to come and do a presentation as well. So you did your job, and we appreciated it very much. Jim Peterson, please.
Can I speak to that for just a moment? I agree. This is not a matter of sides. I mean, it's a whole different.
Right.
I mean, we're the citizens. I mean,
Right.
we're the people that you represent.
Right.
And we're telling you what we think, and about this blight in our community. Epic is a profit-making company that has a vested interest in this. I mean, it's not an equal thing. I mean, this is what we're supposed to do.
Right.
Citizens are supposed to come here and tell you, our representatives, what our problems are with this community and our concerns. And that's a totally different thing than going toe-to-toe with vested interest.
And I
So,
appreciate that. I think you did a good job. I think everybody has the opportunity to do a presentation and be on our Wednesday meetings. So what you guys did today was fair, and I appreciate that. The only thing I didn't know that it was specifically on a billboard presentation. Would it have mattered at that point? I think just so there's in a subcommittee putting billboard presentation, so the council also can look up some of the information and have more questions on what they were thinking. But you did a good job. You did what you were supposed to do, and as citizens, we appreciate that.
Well, as far as the beautification committee, the conversation was, well, if we're going to worry about shuffling a few potted plants around the street corners as compared to these huge, monstrous billboards that blight our city, I mean, what's more of an issue of beautification? So this is a discussion about beautification of Rapid City, South Dakota. That's what it's
Right.
about.
I appreciate that, Jim Peterson. Council members, any other questions? Okay, thank you for your presentation, Jim Peterson and Kathy Calhoun, and council members for showing up today. We appreciate the information. The booklets were very informational. If we have any questions, we can give you a call. I thank you all for coming today. Motion to adjourn, please. Been moved by Karen and second by Ron Weifenbach to adjourn. All in favor say aye. All opposed, motion carries.